I'm Melissa Kerner, and you're watching BB50 TV, the place to be to get the guidance, support, and tools you need to make the second phase of your life the best years of your life. Did you know that it's estimated that half of all women will develop a bone fracture after menopause? The good news is this is preventable. But most women don't realize they're not taking the specific steps necessary to build and maintain strong bones as they age. And when a woman doesn't take the right steps to maintain healthy bones, statistics show that she'll lose about 45% of her bone from age 35 to 85. If you're looking for simple and natural solutions to prevent fractures and strengthen your bones naturally, then today's episode is for you. I'm talking with bone health expert Dr. Susan Brown, and she's going to share how an alkaline diet, mindfulness exercises, and changing your thoughts can be your best tools for healing your bones. Plus, she's going to share the 4 big warning signs to look out for, indicating that you have poor bone health. It's not just about bone density, why the term osteopenia doesn't really mean anything, and how bone drugs can do more harm than good. Dr. Susan Brown is a renowned medical anthropologist, certified nutritionist, and the author of numerous books, including Better Bones, Better Body, and the Acid Alkaline Food Guide. Through more than 20 years of research, Dr. Brown has discovered that our bones need 20 key nutrients, not just calcium, to repair themselves, and that the body needs to maintain a balanced pH to prevent further bone loss. Dr. Brown currently directs the Better Bones Foundation and the Center for Better Bones in Syracuse, New York. With the Better Bones Foundation, she currently conducts primary research, lectures widely on osteoporosis prevention and reversal, and teaches the use of a holistic natural program for the regeneration of bone health. Through the Center for Better Bones, she provides consulting, education, research, and lecture services for health professionals and the public. Dr. Brown has partnered with the Women's Health Network in Portland, Maine, to create the world's most informative bone health website, betterbones.com. Dr. Brown, welcome. Really delighted to have you with us today.
Thank you very much. It's nice to be here.
So we're talking about bone health, maintaining good muscle health. Why is this so important, especially for women, who are approaching 50 and over? I mean, what are some of the health risks if a woman is not mindful of maintaining strong bones and muscles?
Well, it's really very interesting that there's a tight link between bone and muscles. In fact, it's called the bone-muscle unit. And so when you lose bone, you lose muscle. And when you lose muscle, you lose bone. If a woman does nothing, doesn't make any special effort to maintain both her skeleton and her muscle, she will lose probably 45% of her muscle and 45% of her bone as she goes from, say, 35 to 85. And we recognize this if we look at older women. We notice many of them become quite frail and weak. Even if you do a strong program, it's still a challenge to maintain that vitality. We need the skeleton to carry us around. A half of all women will develop a fracture after menopause. And this is sometimes simply annoying, like if it's a wrist fracture, but it can be very serious if it's like a hip fracture or multiple spinal fractures where you actually lose height and begin to have a lot of back pain. And losing muscle, we all know, is such a big problem because it handicaps in our everyday activity. Many people you see with kyphosis, that are humped over, have this humped Dowager's hump, they actually don't have spinal fractures. They have muscle weakness that is such that they have lost their posture over time. So even as I sit here today talking with you and spend so many hours at the desk, it's important to remember posture and keeping those back muscles strong, because the nature of things is you're going to lose muscle and bone as you age, so you really need to have a program to maintain muscle and bone.
So that's interesting. I think sometimes, I think we focus on like one or the other, but you're saying they're very intimately connected. So when one gets weak, the other one gets weak. But is it also true when the other one strengthens, we strengthen the other?
Yes, exactly.
Okay.
One of the best ways to strengthen bone, for example, is to have the muscle pulling on the tendon that pulls on the bone. And that actually bends bone a bit. and that actually strengthens bone. And the same thing, if you build muscle, you say, I want to be strong, you build muscle, you're going to build bone. In fact, hey, Susan, what do you think my bone strength is? We would look at the muscle. Mm-hmm. It's very reflective. In fact, they found grip strength is a good measure of actually spinal bone density, how strong a grip a person has. So the muscle story is a great story. They go together. A lack of muscle, a loss of muscle is called sarcopenia. Like, I've known many people who, this one friend of mine, she was 85. She could not stand up. She could not get out of a wheelchair because of muscle weakness. She would fall and not break anything. She had strong bones because she was a very big woman who had developed strong bones, but her muscles were so limited she couldn't lift that weight. So it's good to remember that we can be limited by muscle weakness, and so we put those two together, build strong muscle, maintain strong bone.
Let's talk about some of the secrets to maintaining healthy muscles, healthy bones, especially over 50.
Well, right away we'll say exercise. Everyone knows the old use it or lose it. If you don't show your muscles, if you don't work them, they're not going to grow stronger. And so if you exhaust the muscles, even with a simple exercise, if I take a weight and I lift this muscle 100 times, but it's not any effort, it's not going to get strong. But if I take a weight that I can barely lift and I exhaust the muscle, within 10 repetitions, I'm going to exhaust it, and it's going to grow stronger in response. So a serious exercise program that goes a little bit beyond the comfort zone, maybe working with a trainer, working with a physical therapist to actually build strength, strength of the whole body, but particularly of the spine, particularly of the arms and the legs. So working with someone who can help you do strength training based on exhausting the muscles. Sometimes people say, I've been lifting weights, they're lifting a 1-pound weight, and I can do it all day. That's not going to get the results. We all know exercise is important. One of the secrets that people don't know so much about is an alkaline diet. Actually, our body is a very complicated chemical system that has a very particular pH, acid-base balance. The blood has to be slightly alkaline. If you remember from chemistry, 7 pH is neutral, 1 is very acid, 14 is very alkaline. We need to be 7. The blood, in order for you to survive, your blood has to be slightly alkaline. And we maintain that balance quite easily by a variety of mechanisms, but we can upset the pH balance if we eat too many acid-forming foods. It's strange because the body maintains pH really through breathing, through the kidneys, through many mechanisms, but there is a window that we can accumulate acid in the healthy person, and that is if it does not have enough mineral compounds that are high in acid forming, like bicarbonates, citrates, ascorbates. So the alkaline diet has been now shown to maintain both muscle and bone as we age. And in my work, and we have a very wonderful book on that called the Acid Alkaline Food Guide, which talks all about an acid alkaline balance and why it's important to alkaline. That is the key really to maintaining muscle is exercise and developing an alkaline diet. Now, an alkaline diet turns out to be a very mineral-rich diet, and we can talk about that in a second, but I would say those are the 2 keys to show the muscles you need them through strength training. And we can talk about there's so many kinds of strength training now. And they even find that mindful things like yoga, tai chi, qigong, they build strength, they build bone, build muscle. They do studies on yoga showing that they can build bone. It's all very nice. We think of weightlifting and really resistance exercises, they're good. But other things like these mindful exercises, there's certain tools that can really help you, like this classical stretch video series, which has been very popular on public TV for many years. It's Miranda Esmond White that does that. Those are very safe exercises. We at the Center for Better Bones, in exercise, we really like to use a weighted vest because a weighted vest gives more impact with every step and you carry more weight. That's an interesting question because light people put less impact on bones and they need to put additional weights. We can talk more about that if you like, but those are the two key I'd highlight.
Yeah, let's kind of break down the exercise piece and let's dig into the dietary piece so we can leave our listeners with some really tangible action steps. So you talked about yoga, Tai Chi, Qigong, some strength training. What if someone doesn't necessarily want to go to a gym? Like, can they get sort of the resistance training they need, like maybe gardening, if they're, lifting?
Well, yeah, just remember you have to build muscle.
Yeah.
So if you say, because it's the muscles attached to the tendons pulling on the bone that sends a signal to build new bone. So if you say, they just did a recent study with people who worked outside, men who worked outside, labor, better bone density than others. So if you say, my work is really quite demanding, I have a very good muscle structure, and a woman 50 is going to start losing muscle. And I bet the woman 50 already noticed, I'm not as strong as I used to be. Like, sometimes you just notice, this can is harder to open than it used to be, much less lifting these things I lift, the grandchildren or the groceries or whatever. So if you do gardening seriously, if you make an effort to actually go beyond your everyday activities to actually build muscle, the reason we often do training is that by ourselves we might not be disciplined enough, and we might not measure and say, oh, this is how much weight I can lift right now. After I garden 3 weeks, how much can I lift? We don't. But many types of physical activity will do it. One of the interesting things people can do at home, well, number one, the exercise should be something you like. But if you like to do like yoga, there's some very nice programs. There's some yoga that we have at betterbones.com, some videos that use yoga even with weights. So there's home workouts with strength training. On our website, betterbones.com, we've tried to have a lot of these different options. But you have to see what you like and then build muscle.
Gotcha. Okay.
Go beyond what you like, your comfort zone.
Yeah, you're going to be more apt to make it a part of your lifestyle if it's something you actually enjoy doing. Yeah,
right.
I personally, one of my favorite kinds of strength training and balance training, even core training, is doing yoga, because I can do it right at home. I don't really need a lot of space. I don't need a lot of equipment. I literally just lay out my yoga mat. And so I think having that convenience, I think, is good. It's really just a matter of finding something that you like to do and works for your lifestyle.
And don't underestimate classes, because the support group and the instruction and the fact, I'm going to go today even though I really don't want to go, that's all very important.
Yeah, absolutely. Let's talk more about the alkaline diet. Can you just kind of outline what are foods that are ideal for maintaining healthy bones and joints and muscles, and what are sort of foods that, are not?
Certainly. This is really a very well-developed science of looking at the content of food and how it's metabolized in the body. And so some of the researchers have emphasized the fact that it's potassium in the fruits and vegetables, nuts and seeds that is attached to citrate, which is a great alkalizing compound. And so it's not like how the food tastes, but it's how the food is metabolized. When it's metabolized, does it leave an acid residue, which is free hydrogen, or does it leave a base residue and absorb acid? So lemons and limes, for example, are very good alkalizers, even though they taste acid in the body. And that's because they have citric acid. And that citric acid, the body then converts into bicarbonate. It's kind of, like I say, if people are really interested, they should look at the Acid Alkaline Food Guide or our website, betterbones.com, or even Alkaline for Life, which is another website we have, because it's a fascinating science. So essentially, most all vegetables. We always say get 2 cups of vegetables for lunch, 2 for dinner. Very simple guideline. Most all fruits. Fruits are lovely and tasty. They're a little bit high in sugar, so we prefer more vegetables, but some fruits. Nuts and seeds. Almost all nuts and seeds are alkalizing. There's a few exceptions, but that's not so important. And these spices are almost alkalizing. Right now I'm working with Ayurvedic cooking. These wonderful spices from this ancient science of nutrition from India, they all alkalize also. and also what we call pulses, these little small seeds like mung beans and lentils. Those are also alkalizing. So that's the bulk of our diet. Now, protein is acid forming. Just like when we burn fossil fuels, we get acid rain because we reduce sulfuric acid is released into the environment. When we burn acid foods like protein, we produce an internal acidity, like an internal acid rain. But generally, the body can handle that if we don't have too many acid-forming things. So meat and protein, even most beans, are acid-forming, but that's okay because we need them. We always say maybe 60 grams of protein, maybe 70 grams of protein is fine. You need that. But not too much more than that unless you're a big exerciser and working to build muscle. So the meat is acid-forming. All protein sources are acid-forming, like the beans. And certainly the processed foods, the sugar, alcohol, caffeine, all these, all these processed foods and snack foods. I mean, it's hard to think of where Twinkies would go or chips. This is all that food, all the processed food, because the minerals are taken out of it. We really talk about high mineral foods high in potassium, calcium, magnesium, zinc, manganese. Fruits, vegetables, nuts, and seeds, 2 cups of vegetables for lunch and dinner, adequate protein. You need protein for bone, you need protein for muscle, probably the size of your palm of a piece of flesh food if you do it. We like to say maybe flesh food protein once a day. If you like fish, chicken, or turkey, maybe beans once a day. And if you don't eat the flesh food, more beans.
Where do grains and high starch foods like potatoes fall?
The root crops actually are very alkalizing because they're high in potassium. So the sweet potatoes, the yams, the turnips, the beets, even the white potatoes are very alkalizing. And many of my clients will say, gosh, I alkalize so well if I have a sweet potato every day. They're very alkalizing. Some people with a glycemic problem may say, look, I can't do white potatoes or this or that. But if you eat the whole sweet potato and you eat the skin in that, it's usually digested very well and you don't raise blood sugar so much. The root crops are alkalizing. The grains are another story. Most grains are acid forming. Certainly wheat, rye, barley, spelt, all those are acid forming. Even rice is a little acid forming. There's a few grains that their chemical composition is such that they're not acid forming, and that's like millet, quinoa, teff. Those grains are really more seeds, and they aren't acid forming. They're really better seen as a seed. But again, you need some acid food. If a person's healthy, maybe 40% is acid forming and 60% is alkalizing. But if a person's not healthy and they're trying to regain health, then we tip more to the alkaline side. Like I said, let me just grab this for you because it's kind of confusing. Let me just show you this. This is the Acid Alkaline Food Guide, and it has all the details. Don't let yourself be confused by this. You'll notice in the newspaper a lot of celebrities are taking on alkaline diets, and it's really the same kind of a diet that heart disease. So what we've developed is help people understand the science behind it, which is in this book because we're never going to teach it in this little webinar.
Yeah.
But also we've developed a kit so people can test their own pH balance, which is very important. You can look at the first morning urine, you can measure it, and you can know if you're too acid or if you're just in a nice alkaline balance.
Gotcha. It sounds like it's what you're describing kind of sounds like a paleo diet.
Well, it is certainly in the sense that you strive to have mostly fresh whole foods. We're all going to have some snacks here and there, but fresh whole foods. And the paleo diet, I'm an anthropologist by my first profession, and I always chuckle a little at the paleo diet because our ancestors ate anything they could get their hands on. Right. Grubs and bark and flowers. And most of the food for most of human civilization was women gathering different food. And the men would go hunt, but you didn't depend on that because it wasn't always so reliable. When we think of the ice ages, well, maybe you say there was more hunting than gathering going on. But the study of prehistoric diets has shown that the vast majority of them, of these cultures that we knew about, were actually alkaline forming. If you go back and imagine what it was in the ice ages, maybe it was a period when they had eat a lot of meat, but we really evolved having a lot of fruits, vegetables, nuts, seeds, plants of all kind. And so we can say these diets are common, but it's not a high-protein diet. In fact, a high-protein diet will be acid-forming unless you have enough base precursors to buffer those acids produced by excess protein intake.
You had talked about the importance of having some sort of good quality animal protein because you want to have a mix of alkaline and acid-forming foods. What if someone is a vegetarian or they're vegan, they don't want to eat meat or they don't want to eat animal products as a whole? Is there a concern in terms of what can happen to bone health and muscle health?
Well, it's really interesting. Personally, I shudder when people come to me who are vegans because I just see that it's very difficult to get all the minerals that you need in what a vegan diet, which is sort of recently invented. I mean, the only people ever to follow this were monks way in the Himalayas who lived a very stress-free life. It's a very difficult diet. I've never seen a strong case of bone health on a vegan diet. So if you do a thing like that, be sure to get lots of minerals. Be sure to supplement with adequate protein. Many times, particularly thin women, are not consuming enough protein to build their bones. In fact, the new studies show that that's maybe not even, but 70, 80 grams of protein can really help. But you have to balance that off with the alkalizing mineral compounds. Now, many people actually take supplements for that effect. And we have listed all the 20 key bone-building nutrients. We always deliver those in alkalizing form. So if you take your calcium, your magnesium, your zinc, your boron, and you can balance those two off. So you want to always check to see if you're balanced, and that's what we developed this pH kit for. And you want to get adequate protein and a vegetarian diet. Now, they're like India. I mentioned my fascination with the ancient diet of India, Ayurveda. It's a very high science of diet. And you will eat beans every single day, probably twice. And so you pay attention to these. There's very high quality vegetarian diets, but either follow a traditional system like Ayurveda or make sure you're getting all the nutrients that you need, including the B vitamins and the iron, as well as all the alkalizing of the minerals.
So can we talk a little bit more about the supplement piece? What are some of the key supplements that someone needs to take, and does it depend on what their diet and exercise habits are like, or are there sort of supplements you just sort of recommend across the board?
Well, sure. I mean, the more we exercise, the more we need nutrients. We find out that bikers, for example, athletes of all kinds, lose many, many nutrients when they sweat and when they exercise. And so if you're big, you need extra nutrients. If, on the other hand, so if you're a big exerciser, on the other hand, if you say, I'm not a big exerciser, but I'm not doing well, my bone isn't developing well, I have a lower bone density than I should, I have not a great muscle mass, I maybe don't feel as vigorous as I want to feel, particularly bone, if we just take bone. If your bone isn't doing well, you need to nourish better with all the 20 key nutrients that'll build bone. So you can individually assess it, but anyone who has a bone weakness, who has low density, or who has fractured really needs to boost up these bone-building nutrients. And we have identified 20 key bone nutrients. If you go to betterbones.com, you'll see we have a great discussion of all these, not just calcium, not just vitamin D, not magnesium, but 20 key nutrients. And we even list for you the therapeutic dose, what dose you should have. So there's very expensive testing of nutrients. You can do that, but short of that, it's good to give your body baseline amount of all these nutrients. And there's also signs and symptoms of nutrient inadequacy. Like if you black and blue easily, you likely have a deficiency in vitamin C. If you get leg cramps at night, for example, it's probably calcium or magnesium. We have some of these little questionnaires on our website, so you can kind of sort out what am I likely very low in. But it's surprising, we're one of the richest countries in the world, and yet we have some of the poorest health profiles. I think we're like 34th in longevity, and very many key nutrients, even though we have such an abundance of food. We sort of forget the body works as one whole unit, and it needs hundreds of nutrients, but we've identified 20 that are essential to bone. But the chemistry, you will simply die if your chemistry is not in an alkaline position. So the body is willing to sacrifice bone to give up its mineral compounds, which are very alkalizing, if you have a little tiny acidic tilt. It just sends a message, break down bone, we got to get the balance. So what we're saying is give the body everything it needs so it doesn't have to stress out and break down bone to keep in balance.
Am I understanding this correct? I've heard this, that your body will actually pull calcium directly from your bones to neutralize the acidity. Is that true?
Well, sure, because if the pH of the blood changes just a tiny bit, you will die. And so the body, Mother Nature, in all her wisdom, stored the bone full of alkalizing compounds, not only calcium and magnesium, some potassium, phosphorus, but also sodium. They've just found out that people with low sodium often will break down bone to get the sodium out to raise the blood sodium because they need to have adequate. So our bones are like a great storehouse of all these nutrients, and they're used for the most important actions first. The most important action is minute-to-minute survival, which is dependent on appropriate pH and dependent on calcium level being stable in the blood. Calcium is a messenger. It regulates heartbeat. So it has to be precise in the blood, and there you have these big stores in the bone. If you get low in calcium for some reason, they'll just draw it out of the bone.
Wow, interesting. Pretty amazing how our body works.
It is. That we have billions of cells, and every cell knows what every other cell is doing. We have an amazing network of intelligence, and it's really to our benefit to do the meditation, to quiet the mind, to spend time in nature, to get back in touch, that intelligence of the body can readjust. And it's a magnificent intelligence all around us in nature. We take it so for granted in our body. And every stress and every ill we have, every ailment is the body sending us signals.
Right.
You're not quite giving me what I need.
Right. Absolutely.
Yeah.
So we've talked about diet and exercise and supplements. Can we talk a little bit about the role that stress and emotions can actually have on our muscles and bone health? Because I don't think people think about that. I think the nutrition, the exercise, the supplement, that's kind of obvious, but let's talk about the connection between stress, emotions, bone health, and muscle health.
That's a really very important new frontier. And it reminds us of what Deepak Chopra says about nothing holds more power over the body than thoughts held in the mind. And if you just have a thought, oh, I'm worried that my husband's going to leave me, or I'm worried that this person doesn't like me, you will immediately send stress hormones that go to every single cell. Every single cell becomes unhappy and worried. And when they're unhappy and worried, that's when they tend to go into creating more acids, creating more leaky gut, creating more poor digestion. We know in bone health that worry is very damaging to bone. And I always say worry is sort of the child of fear. And so we have to really think about what happens when we have a stress like that. We produce hormones of distress, like cortisol, adrenaline, norepinephrine. These hormones send a direct signal to the body. We're in a threat situation. We've got to fight or flee. And so the body stops digestion, starts breaking down bone in order to get reserves ready to start the fight. So you see now a very clear link between stress and osteoporosis as measured by cortisol, and even cortisol you produce within your body. We know that 20% of all of osteoporosis in the U.S. is caused by the use of steroid drugs like prednisone, which is like a cortisol you take externally because you want to dampen down an immune response. But the cortisol you produce just under stress also is enough to significantly damage bone. We know depression is linked to weaker bone density. We know that these emotional factors, and they seem to be mediated largely by cortisol, by the stress hormone cortisol. In fact, in our work, we measure cortisol levels because we want to help people see if it's high. Then you want to do more meditation, more of these mindful exercises, and dealing with the emotional stresses and strains that cause you this disease.
Right. Do you have a favorite stress reduction exercise that you like to share with your patients?
Well, you know what we do? It's so important to the Better Bones program that I developed a Meditations for Bone Health CD, and it has like 5 different meditations, and it helps you visualize the calming of the nervous system, but at the same time the building of bone. So we definitely like meditation. Visualization is very helpful, and now there's a world, an explosion of awareness about how our emotional bodies and how our energetic bodies can actually influence the physical body. So there's so many wonderful teachers. As you probably get the idea, I'm very fond of Ayurveda and teachers like Deepak Chopra, who really have brought ancient science to us. All these wonderful world of meditation teachers and people teaching mindfulness, all the new types of therapy to help people get down to their core distress patterns and release them. Oh, that's important. Yeah, that's, I say it's so important, and really peacefulness within, but happiness, you know.
Yep.
So we might just think, am I happy? You know,
Yeah.
what would I do to be happy? Well, maybe I've got to change this or that, or maybe I got to take a little time for myself. Yeah, to pay a little more attention to how we feel.
Yeah, good awareness, because I don't think a lot of people make the connection between happiness and bone health.
Exactly. And you know, there's a saying in the Bible, something like a happy smile makes for strong bones. I quote some of these biblical statements where they directly link bone to spiritual, to emotions. Yeah.
Wow. Let's talk about antioxidants. First of all, what are they? Because it's kind of a buzzword that's been going around for a little bit. What are antioxidants? How do they impact aging? What's the role they play in that process? And how do we actually get antioxidants?
Well, you know, that's a really good question. And why we like all these fruits and vegetables is because they have compounds like vitamin C, vitamin E, quercetin, flavonoids, all kinds of plant compounds that can actually quench free radicals. When you metabolize food or when you exercise, you produce these free radicals. You produce these electrical charges that are released from the molecules, so to speak, and they have to be they're like buzzing around the body. They have to be captured. They have to be neutralized, and antioxidants are able to combine with these free radicals and neutralize their reaction. So they like soak up these free radicals. They actually donate, like vitamin C is a great antioxidant that donates electrons to quiet down these overreactive molecules. And so the antioxidants we talk about a lot are like vitamin E, which is a great antioxidant from grains and other foods and nuts and seeds, and vitamin C, which is really, to my mind, is the premier antioxidant. It's what I call the maternal sacrificial antioxidant, that it will sacrifice itself even to help other antioxidants like glutathione, which is the main antioxidant in the cell. Vitamin C will donate electrons, so the glutathione, you see, an antioxidant becomes used up once it donates its electron, but vitamin C, you can recharge vitamin C. So vitamin C is a great antioxidant, and you can kind of tell how much antioxidant you need by how much vitamin C you can tolerate. We're very fond of using specifically buffered ascorbates. It's kind of a complicated topic, but there's all kinds of qualities of vitamin C. You want a vitamin C that's very of electrons that it can donate. It's fully buffered. But antioxidants are what we produce oxidative damage, which is a sort of a rusting, the same way that rust is produced, this oxidative damage, it's just through our metabolism, and we constantly have to be correcting that with these antioxidants. Mm-hmm. So the fruits, vegetables, nuts, and seeds. In fact, if you look at it, the plants, they're exposed to sunlight, they're exposed to a lot of ultraviolet radiation, they're exposed to molds, to viruses. they protect themselves by producing these antioxidants. So our antioxidants mainly come from plants because the plants themselves have to make all these compounds, what we call phyto compounds, flavonoids, flavonols, so many different compounds to protect themselves. When we eat the plant, we get those antioxidants. But if we eat the animal that's already eaten the plant, the animal uses the antioxidants for their benefit, and we don't get the antioxidants. So you can't say I'm going to get antioxidants from my beef or my chicken. You have to get it from the plants who have used it to protect themselves from all this damage.
Gotcha. So fruits and vegetables, great source of antioxidant.
Nuts and seeds, these spices, these, like, everyone's heard of turmeric, which is a common food spice, which is very powerful. Coriander, oregano, cumin, these are all very therapeutic foods.
Got it. Awesome. This is great. So we've talked about ways to maintain healthy bones and muscles through exercise, diet, supplements, making sure we're getting, high amounts of antioxidants. You kind of touched upon this before. I'd like to dig a little bit deeper. What are some signs to look for that maybe your bones and muscles aren't as healthy as they could be? Like you mentioned grip strength before.
Right.
That's a sign that bone density isn't good. Are there some kind of like tests that someone can do at home? I know you have an evaluation on your website. How do we sort of assess what's going on?
Well, if you're talking about home tests, you can definitely look at muscle strength. You can look at muscle strength. If you say, geez, I've been kind of lazy, or I got ill and I couldn't do anything, and I noticed my legs are weak and my arms are weak. So muscle strength is really, and you can say, how many sit-ups can I do today? How many push-ups? It's simple. You can measure it yourself. Muscle strength is really important. And you can go to a physical therapist or a trainer, and they can help you see your muscle strength. That directly relates to bone in most cases. On my website, we have some really wonderful back exercises, because if you build the spinal muscle, the muscles that go up and down the spine, you're going to build that just by laying down and lifting up your chest, like the cobra and yoga, a big help. But other signs and symptoms are things like receding gums. The average woman will have receding gums, probably 35. That is a sign of bone loss, specifically spinal bone loss. The jawbone is the only bone you can see. And when you see your teeth the roots are starting to show, that's a thing of receding gums, and that is related to bone loss for sure. Your nails can tell you a little. If you take your thumb and you flick your nails and you say they're pretty stiff, they're kind of sturdy, that's a really good sign. If you say they're kind of soft, flexible, they break a little, that nail is very similar to the collagen in bone. So you'd say, and they're even saying that wrinkles, there's many things that can cause wrinkles, but it is another collagen manifestation. And so I think the nails are a better predictor. I pay attention to the nails. In fact, the ancient Chinese medicine does that. They look at the nails, they see how strong they are, and that's an important indication.
Good.
Your teeth, your nails, yeah.
Gotcha, okay. Can you just comment on bone drugs here for a minute? A lot of our listeners have been diagnosed with osteopenia or osteoporosis, or they do a bone DEXA scan and it's low, and the doctor says we want you to take bone drugs. Can we just talk about some of the risks involved with taking bone drugs? Is it necessary to take bone drugs? If someone's willing to make lifestyle changes, change their diet, take supplements, what are your thoughts about that?
Well, it's pretty clear. We at the Center for Better Bones, our work is really dedicated to the women who want to work with nature to maximize health. They're in our mind, and even in the mind of the Surgeon General, who wrote a report a few years ago. The basic thing is to work with the lifestyle factors that can enhance bone density, recover bone density, but it's really important, just like the Surgeon General said, that you discover the hidden causes of bone loss every day. If you have true bone weakening, one thing is if you're a thin woman, say you weigh 110, you go to the doctor, he says you have osteopenia. Well, of course, because the muscle and bone go together. You have small bones, you have small muscles, you're going to have a low bone density. The bone size is very important in the bone density. So with smaller bones, you're going to get lower readings. Osteopenia is just a made-up term. It doesn't reflect anything except that your density is slower than a young person. But if there's reason to And a lot of my work is helping people sort out, is there really a serious problem? Do I have excessive bone loss, and am I at risk of fracture? If you have fracture, then you know you're at risk of fracture, and then you should really get very serious about looking for the causes of bone weakening. So our campaign is, number one, every true case of bone weakening has a reason. Find out that reason. One of the things we've done is develop a medical osteoporosis workup for consumers so they can see what tests the doctors should do if they say that this is a serious bone problem. We always say if your doctor tells you it's serious enough to take bone drugs, it is serious enough to find out the cause of the problem is.
Right.
And so if they go to our website, they'll find, or even I've done some DVDs on it that are in our shop. Look for the causes, whether it's vitamin D, whether it's loss of calcium in the urine, whether it's parathyroid. It's very important. They detect the low bone density and they say take a drug instead of saying, hey, why do you have this low bone density?
Right.
So we have a very systematic program. First, assess what's going on, find out if there is a true problem, the cause of it, do all these steps of an alkaline diet, of exercise, of reducing all these anti-nutrients like excess alcohol and coffee and sugar, excess stress, dealing with emotional and endocrine balance if you need be. And then if that doesn't work, we've got the pH, we've got everything in line. We use all these supplements that are really targeted to alkalize and build bone. Then if a person is still having a problem, if they're still fracturing or still losing bone, to me that's the only case you should take drugs. And many good doctors do not give drugs until a person has fractured because you can't tell who's going to fracture. And you can only use the drugs for a certain period of time. And everybody I've seen who was on a drug and went off the drug because you have to go off them after 5 years or so because it's too dangerous to continue, they lost more bone than they gained. They ended up worse than they started.
Wow.
So think carefully about the drug therapy.
Wow.
Think very carefully.
Wow.
We have all kinds of information on our website. The latest study was a European study that's really looking at overdiagnosis of medical treatments, and they're really looking at osteoporosis. And they're pointing out that bisphosphonates are just not effective enough. They're not worth the risks involved. For example, they looked at major studies, real-life studies, and they found you had to treat 175 women for 3 years to prevent one hip fracture. They're talking particularly about the value of these drugs in preventing hip fractures. And you have to treat 185 to prevent one fracture. And if you treat 300 for 3 years, one person's going to get a needless serious side effect like a fracture. And so the benefit is very, very small. And if you take hip fractures, the average age of hip fracture is 80. At this age group, these drugs don't work anyway. So if you're trying to prevent hip fracture, these scientists say it's a waste of time. If you're trying to prevent vertebral fracture, there's many better ways to do it. And the first thing everybody should do is go get their vitamin D tested. It's the simplest thing. It's the most, get all those key nutrients, alkalize. I would just say to all the dear women of the world, no one cares about your health as much as you do. Put a little effort, learn about this, and you should probably never have to use bone drugs unless you're one of those quirky cases where it just can't be figured out. But you must do some work.
Gotcha.
You must take responsibility.
Love
and
it.
if you don't want to take yeah.
Yeah, I love it. What a great take-home message. I mean, at the end of the day, you have to own it because we can share the information. We've given a lot of great, very realistic, reasonable action steps. But if you're not willing to take responsibility and do something, well, that's kind of in your hands, right? It's on you.
And the nice thing is, if you choose to work with bone, like our program is called Better Bones, Better Body. So it's that you're going to improve the depth of your whole body. It's not just saying, I'm going to work on bone, but I can't help my heart, or I got this other problem here.
Right.
It's like and I imagine all the avenues. If a person says, I've got to deal with my headaches, if they deal with somebody in functional medicine, someone who really looks for the root causes, they will solve many problems at the same time.
Right.
So always look for the cause of the problem, the root cause if you can, and then correct it. And the root causes to bone we see are not getting the 20 key nutrients, not having pH balance, not giving appropriate physical loading, working the body, and patterns of distress that set all the neurological systems which ultimately control bone.
Gotcha. Wow. Good stuff. So if somebody wants to learn more about you, where are the best places to go?
Well, it's been my pleasure to be with you, and I'll tell you that I have, here at the Center for Better Bones, we have dedicated ourselves to exploring the full human potential for regaining bone health, and we're happy to work with motivated individuals. We have produced many, many materials that are all available on our two websites, which are betterbones.com and alkalineforlife.com. We have everything from pH kit, test kits, to exercise material, to the books I've written, to all kinds of DVDs, so you can learn to take charge of your bone health. For the people who want additional help, who want me to actually work with them to look at their case, to evaluate their case, they just give our office a call. I spend a lot of time, 2 days a week, working with individual clients. So if people want to become a client, if they want me to take them through the process, or if they say just, I want a half an hour of your time to ask questions, we're very open to bringing about this revolution in women's bone health care and women's total health care. The first step is us all taking charge and responsibility. So I'm here to help. We hope you look at our materials, and I thank you for this contribution. You are doing a lot to expand awareness amongst women.
Yep, that's why we do what we do.
Exactly.
Awesome.
Excellent.
Well, thank you so much, Dr. Brown. This has been wonderful.
Okay, it was my pleasure.
Now, before I go, I want to know what's resonating with you most from today's episode. Let me know by posting in the comments below. And if you haven't already, make sure you sign up for my next free masterclass, where we'll take some of the concepts we talked about today and go a little bit deeper. If you're struggling with bone loss or other inflammatory related conditions, you'll definitely want to be a part of this free training so you can get the plan you need to eliminate inflammation naturally. Go to betterbeyond50.com/masterclass to save your seat. Thank you so much for watching, and I will see you on the next episode of BB50 TV.